Hey everyone and welcome back. In today's video we're going to focus on Milan icon Paolo Maldini, but not for his on-the-field career as an absolute legend, an absolute hero to the club, perennial Champions League winner, best left back of all time. We're going to focus on his short career as Milan technical director. He's 2 years into the position and I think it's fair to assess his movements and see if he's the right man for the job or seeing if he's taking club in the right direction, working well with the management above and the head coaches he has at his disposal. For those of you who don't know, Paolo Maldini took the role as technical director in summer 2019 after Leonardo stepped down from the position after what was a disappointing end to the previous campaign where Gennaro Gattuso also stepped down as head coach. You see, Maldini had no previous experience in this position, and despite the fact there were links to Ivan Gazidis, the CEO, potentially getting in impressive technical director Luis Campos from Lille, he decided to go with Maldini and set him up with a team around him, including sporting director Frederic Massara, to entrust him that he was the right man for this role and, like I said, push the club in the right direction. I don't think any Milan fan in the summer of 2019 would have blamed Ivan Gazidis for pursuing Luis Campos. Campos had proven himself as a technical director at Lille and previously at Monaco, whereas Maldini had no experience in this position. So essentially Gazidis kind of went before his heart rather than his head. And he selected Milan icon and legend Paolo Maldini in a role where there was still enormous pressure to be put on someone in this position, because despite the fact that Gazidis was going to rely that there was a slightly less budget to work of and rulings with FFP to follow, there was still the pressure to build the club upwards and give the owners, Elliott, some sort of reasons to continuously invest in the club. I think it's very important for Milan fans to know that Maldini does not have the same elements of freedom that previous technical director Leonardo and before him Mirabelli had. There's a lot more pressure coming from the above to keep the club aligned with FFP, with debt. Obviously COVID is now affecting the club and its budget and its income. There's a lot of pressure being mounted on Maldini to move the club forward with a lot less potential spend that he has to work with. And Maldini highlighted this in an interview, and you can see the link to this in the description below, which is on Sempre Milan. It's going to take some time for the club to be allowed to spend how we, as fans, want Maldini to spend it on certain players, on wages and on transfer fees. It's going to take the fact that we have to be perennial Champions League qualifying caliber of a team for us to get back to spending that money. So, like I said, it's very important for us to remember that this isn't a quick turnaround. This isn't something that, even if we qualify for the Champions League in the summer, that Maldini can go out and spend loads of money because we have this Champions League money. Essentially, this money is going to go straight to the debt that the club has mounted over the years and get us more looking better in the books and pleasing Elliott and pleasing Gazidis. So yeah, focusing on Maldini's actual job, it's very much to facilitate the club on the pitch, the head coach, and being that link between the head coach and management. And you know, if the coach feels like he needs a certain player in a certain position, it's Maldini's job to go out there and potentially buy that player. All at the same time working to the restrictions he has from the CEO or whoever's running the budget, and being that middleman to provide for the club and make sure it's going in the right direction. So I think it's right to firstly focus on the players that Maldini's bringing into the club and seeing if they're the right people for it. The player pattern, from what we can see so far as Maldini as technical director, is that he's trying to bring a mix of experience and youthful quality, and regardless of the age of these people or where they might come from, is that there is an initial hunger to do well for the club. Regardless of who comes in, they want to be here and they want to play for the club and wear the shirt. Like he said in this interview not long before the Man United game, and in the description below, that a lot of the players who want to be here make sacrifices. They could easily earn more money elsewhere, but they'd rather come and play here for this prestigious club because they respect it, they respect the shirt, and they respect Maldini. And that's something that not any technical director can do. You know, it's easy just to sway someone with a higher wage or a higher transfer fee or agent fees or whatever it might be. But Maldini gets people here because they want to be here. And we saw this in the Theo Hernandez deal. We saw this, that he went directly to him. And it's so important. Imagine as a player, especially as a left back, that the best left back of all time has come to directly meet you and say, I want you at my club. Would you say no to that? I mean, I wouldn't. Obviously, as a Milan fan, I might be a bit biased. But as a neutral player, I think no one can reject that. No one can reject that sort of feeling for nurture and love and to feel wanted. And I guess what he's trying to do there is, if he makes them feel wanted, they're going to do their all for the club. As I've stated just now, that Maldini hasn't got a pot of gold to work with. He hasn't got all the wages in the world to throw at a certain player and get them to sign for the club. So what he's done over the years has been incredible, which is drastically reducing the wage bill and obviously spending a lot less each transfer window. Well, he's barely spent anything compared to his predecessors. Despite the fact that Maldini brought in 39-year-old Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he's managed to keep the squad's average age to around the 25 mark, which is incredible because it shows that we're following this sort of Ajax philosophy, and you can see that in his transfers. You can see that in the fact that he's obviously buying certain players of experience, but he's focusing mainly on these young and hungry players who he buys low. You know, if we look at deals like the Theo Hernandez move, we look at the Ismael Benacer move, we look at the Jens Petter Haug, the Alexis Salamakers moves, he's buying these players for around about, you know, less than 20 million euros because they have so much potential of growth. And dare I say it, the day we might have to resell these players, there is an incredible profit margin to be made. Even in his loan moves, you know, look at the loan moves that he's made in the recent transfer windows, like Tomori, obviously the high paid loan for Tonali, Dalot, Brahim Diaz. They're essentially low risk moves because we're not fully investing in players we're not quite sure about yet, and has us sort of like in a period where it's like a try before you buy move, because, you know, they're young enough to not be sort of essentially wanted from their clubs, but they have so much potential where we can look at them and go, you know, they're actually worth buying that money, because once we do buy them in about 3 to 4 years time, they can warrant such a high transfer fee, whereas they're going to make the previous club that we bought them from regret the fact that we you know, they sold them to us. So following on from the transfers, we have to give massive credit to Maldini and Masada for the scouting network that they have operating right now. It seems that any player we're linked with, that automatically Leipzig, Arsenal, Roma, so any of these clubs who are following our sort of philosophy, they're automatically linked with as well. What's also noticeable from the outside in is that Maldini has this very close connection and relationship with head coach Stefano Pioli. And that's important because essentially he's the middleman between the coach and management. Maldini's relationship with Pioli has to be, you know, on point, because Pioli's going to want certain players in. He's going to want to shift certain players, and Maldini, you know, he's got to do his job and not go against that and keep everyone happy. So I feel like he's doing the right job for it, and we can see it with the transfer windows that Maldini shipped out a lot of the players that us as fans and Pioli knew that just shouldn't be here anymore. They're on high wages and adding nothing to the team. So regardless if it's like Matteo Musacchio or sending out Andrea Conti on loan, it's the right move to make because they're having no impact to the club, and obviously their wages are jeopardising our annual spend. Now, I don't want to go on too much about head coach Stefano Pioli because I think he's worth his own video, but you can see this connection he has with Maldini and the impact he has on him is because look at the recent transfer news that we're hearing is that Milan are going off signing free transfer Falvin and going more on a player like Octavio, because Octavio represents a player more that Pioli wants, which is more, you know, he's going to help out more defensively. He's also technically very good. If we look at him as more of a Alexis Salamakers player rather than someone like Falvin who might be a bit more like Sousa. So we're seeing that there is a link between management and head coach, which is essentially going to push the club in the right direction. So bringing things in full circle with that Ajax philosophy and the model of the club, the players that Maldini is bringing in with this massive room for growth, we're seeing the benefits of this. We're seeing the fruits of his labour coming in, because in a recent article in December, and as you can see in the description below, Gazzetta titled quite a few Milan players who've seen their player values dramatically increase. You know, Theo Hernandez, Alexis Salamakers, even young players like Davide Calabria and Donnarumma from the youth team. We have so much room. You know, like I don't want to see us potentially sell these players. You know, I love all each of these players, but I know nothing is forever in a football club, or especially in a football player. So I'd rather lose a player for a massive amount of profit than lose him on a loss, as we've seen in recent transfers. You know, look at the Lucas Billiard deal, for example. Us buying a 32-year-old defensive midfielder and then him going on a free a couple of years later after a failed Milan career. I'd rather someone excel as a young player at this club. And you know what, if they go on to another team and do really well there, at least we've made a bit of money off it. And that's the important thing of this philosophy. I guess as the only downfall of this model is the fact that, you know, contract negotiations are very hard. You know, we're seeing it right now. We're seeing it with Donnarumma, we're seeing it with Çalhanoğlu, we're seeing it with Romagnoli. It's very hard when, you know, Maldini's hands are tied with how much money he can offer a player. There's essentially a cap that he has to stick to, because that has a knock-on effect to the rest of the team. And we're seeing it, you know, it's very difficult for him to maneuver these negotiations. You know, he doesn't want to affect the team's performances on the pitch, so he doesn't want to really sort of be aggressive with his transfer negotiations and be like, you know, you have to sign this this contract now, you know, we're getting within 6 months of your deal expiring. He's letting things sort of ride out and trusting players to want to be here. And whether that works out for him is another thing. You know, the Çalhanoğlu deal looks to be close to being over the line. The Donnarumma deal, I don't know, it's a hard one to sort of predict where that's going to end. I guess that's something where we can critique him slightly on the way he does things. It's very calm. It's very, yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one for me to sort of back this. You know, I'd love to get these contracts done now and nailed in for these players like Donnarumma, but at the same time, it's very hard for what he's working with. And I also do respect that he's being quite calm and trying to not affect their appearances on the pitch by not being aggressive. Also, another thing we have to kind of give Maldini credit for, he's trying to improve the Primavera team. You know, they've not been good recently, considering the fact that they used to churn out a lot of great players. Obviously, we've seen them come through. We're still in the team right now. Seen them to go to bigger clubs like Locatelli or Patrick Cutrone, Matteo Darmian, or even obviously legends like himself coming from the Primavera. It's key to him to get that back and running again and getting them being successful. But as I mentioned before, this isn't an overnight job. This isn't something that's going to take a year or 2 years. This is something that's going to take potentially 5 years. And it's not until we're a slowly building successful club that we're going to see sort of the fruits of his labour in this case. So yeah, wrapping things up, guys, I think Maldini has a very hard job on his hands here as technical director of the club. And I think he knew this taking over the position in 2019. I think he knew that there was a lot of restrictions to it. I think he knew that there wasn't a lot of freedom, that he had to follow a certain business model of the club imposed by Gazidis and Elliott. You know, but at the same time, he's doing an amazing job for it. I think he's doing incredible, and I can't fault him for any of his moves so far. Obviously, you might want to look at the contract negotiations with certain players and think he might be doing a better job. But overall, I think he's doing a cracking job as director here. So yeah, I've round up things. Maldini smashing it so far. But obviously, guys, you're entitled to your own opinions. So if you think he's doing a good job, if you think he could be doing a better job, leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to see your opinions on this one. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Simple Milan. You know, incredible channel, and I love working with it so far. So yeah, guys, until next time, let's hope the performances keep staying good. So until then, Forza Milan.